Hi, I'm Sarah Cowgill, along with Scott Cosenza, Dave Patterson, Graham Noble, and John Clark. And this is The Conservative Five, an online TV production of Liberty Nation News. You know the Democratic Party is in the ditch when even the New York Times can't find a word of encouragement. From columnist Maureen Dowd, who says the organization is in a coma, to the editorial board upping that diagnosis as a bad case of in denial. Throw the playbook out. 2024 was a disaster for the party. You'd think they'd at least check the map for road closures. John Clark is a former member of the Democratic Party. Were you as stubborn as they are to admitting fault? You can atone now.
Thanks a lot for outing me, though I've confessed it previously here on C5. Obviously, I'm not that stubborn because I left them about a decade ago. And I see more people leaving the party. I think Robert Kennedy said that he didn't leave the party left him, and it seems to still be heading out into space, further and further away from planetary orbit. We see Tim Walz acting like a fool and doubling down on the exact policies only about 10% or so of Americans support. And so I don't think it's over. You know that I've also often cited Thomas Frank's book, Listen, Liberals, in which he claims that you cannot make a party over the long term about just hating Donald Trump. You need actual policies. And this party doesn't seem to have gotten that message yet, nor does it have any viable policies. Its entire platform seems to be to hate whatever is red. And they see red whenever they see a MAGA hat or anything else. And then the whole Tesla thing, it's all part of an implosion. So I'm not sure if the quotes you gave aren't actually understatements. A segment of the party is very stubborn, but I think Democrats who are having their cars keyed and defecated upon and other craziness, because it's just insane, are going to continue to not be so stubborn and probably start finding out that, like you guys here, that you're really nice to us former Democrats and you're welcoming and you're affirming. Thank you.
We like to affirm. That's what we do. We affirm. What do the Republicans, Scott, do the Republicans, or rather MAGA, need to worry about from the most from the progressives? I mean, what are they wielding?
Well, to the extent that they want to win against their challengers, my whole political life, I've heard stories of every few years, it seems like so-and-so can't lose. The winds are behind them. Look at this. Whether it's George Bush's approval rating in the Iraq War, or I could give you another half dozen examples. And then 6 months, 10 months, 14 months later, it's like, oh, they flushed that whole thing down the toilet. So I don't know how they're going to flush it down the toilet, but I'm confident that politicians can figure out a way to cut themselves off at the knees. And it might be things like sending immigrants from country A to prisons in country C without so much as an administrative hearing before doing so, for instance, that might have some impact negatively.
Well, that's a good point. So, Dave, since Scott just mentioned, who's going to come in, swoop in and save, is that going to be Tim Walz, our governor friend who is walking around and touting his manliness?
Well, his masculinity is...
those couldn't say that.
Yeah, his superior only in his own mind. He clearly added no significant advantage to the Harris-Walz ticket. And, I use the word significant in its loosest sense. Walz is kind of a caricature of a politician. It's like the cartoon character Mr. Magoo with better eyesight. When he debated J.D. Vance, it seemed as though he were truly perplexed as to why he was on the stage. He projects a Biden light image, and that's when Biden was awake. If any Democrat is going to emerge from the pack, that person is going to have a compelling message that resonates with people. The Dems lost the last election because they lost the people who normally would kind of rally to their cause, except they didn't have a cause. They have nothing. They aren't the party of the people. They demonstrated that. They're the party of the privileged elite, progressive hype, but more to the point, hypocritical left. They rail against oligarchs while depending on the support from oligarchs. They rail against real initiatives to bring law and order and expect their constituents to thank them for having lawlessness and crime-ridden streets. Their
So the Democrats, the Democratic oligarch is better than the Republican oligarch? Is that?
Yeah, well, the Democrats don't even admit that they do take money from oligarchs. Their message is just singularly ridiculous. They embrace the 20% of American people and totally disrespect the remaining 80% who find what the Dems are pushing as silly madness.
I saw a thing in Texas, a story, I couldn't believe it, that he was appearing with Beto O'Rourke. They're still trying to fly that guy. It's like, when do you get the first
Graham
flight?
says they can fly because he's like one of those car dealership balloons.
Well, Beto was in one of his town halls, sitting in the front row.
Okay, so the party's ineffective. I think we can all agree on that. Currently, the Democratic Party is ineffective, and midterms are on their horizon. Is there a way to come back from the ledge, Graham?
Well, politically there may be, because with the midterms, as you say, kind of on the horizon, there's always the chance, that they actually manage to somehow win enough seats to either, kind of crush the Republican majority in the House down to like one seat or something, which of course benefits them politically, or they even manage to somehow grab a couple of seat majority. I'm not sure I see that happening, but of course, just from from the politics angle, that's how they come back from the ledge. From an ideological standpoint, I don't believe there's any coming back. I think I think the Democratic Party is toast ideologically, because they have managed to so enthusiastically and zealously embrace things like transgenderism that the only way they come back from their extremist positions now is to literally abandon those very things that they championed. And how are they going to look amongst the on the progressive left, which is basically the only base they've got now left, is that 15, maybe at the most 20% of Americans who consider themselves kind of hardcore progressives. That's their base now. They are going to lose those people if they suddenly walk away from the whole transgender rights and the whole DEI thing. If they abandon all those policies that got them into this hole, then they are disaffecting the very core of their voter base. So I don't see how they come back. I will hit you with one quick poll, though. And I think this came out either yesterday or today. The latest CNN poll, Democrats' approval is at 21% approval, 68% disapproval. That's among all voters. Among voters who describe themselves just as Democrats, 40% approve, 49% disapprove. So they have 9 points underwater with their own voters. Their only hope going forward is that Trump and the Republicans in Congress make such an unholy mess of everything honestly, I can't really see that happening. But that's the only way that the Democrats come back.
They're going to try to spin that it's happening, though.
Don't bet against it.
Do what?
Don't bet against it, meaning them screwing, things up so bad. That's all I'm saying.
Well, when it comes to congressional Republicans, no, I would never bet against that.
Yeah.
Well, and notice the Florida special elections.
Yeah.
They are also an indication that even without Trump, and those are red districts, but in speaking to Graham's suggestion, the next election will be an off presidential year, and sometimes conservatives don't show up with as much alacrity. But Democrats, they're still shrinking. So I think Graham's right.
Well, as long as there's still people throwing, firecrackers at the Republicans and defecating on Teslas, conservatives are probably going to fight back on that, and that they are probably more aware since the riots of 2020 than anything with this George Floyd nonsense, and it's brought people to the table to really think about politics, I think. And I think that's where we're getting these big turnouts on elections.
I just think it's so delicious. If you think about like the movement progressive left and the top portion of those folks socioeconomically, what are the odds that they own a Tesla previous to the Trump administration? It's pretty high,
Yeah.
So I just love the problem.
I'm
that
not
they
driving
have
one.
themselves,
Well, I doubt anyone thought the Democrats would be in a coma after 2024, but here we are. I do have a sneaking suspicion that the party will rally when it is battle time. Thanks, panel. That's it for our Conservative 5 panel today. Check out our other C5 shows and segments on your favorite video platform. YouTube, Vimeo, Rumble, we're on them all. As well, Liberty Nation News has its own Roku channel where you can see all of our TV productions. Now, Liberty Nation does not endorse candidates, campaigns, or legislation, and this presentation is no endorsement. I'm your host, Sarah Cowgill. Thanks for joining us today for the latest news and commentary. Your choice for free thinking, free speech, libertynation.com.